Hello, I'm George Gonzalez. I'm obsessed with making games, and today is Multiplayer Monday. So I'm going to demonstrate what we're going to be talking about today. And yeah, the demo first to make sure you understand what's going on, visually, what we're trying to accomplish. Okay, so I have both players here, and right now I'm the host on this side, and you can see he's trying to attack. The scales are still relatively new. So let me show you. So that's that guy, and it's the same here as it is there. And I'll show you, I'll kill him, and you'll see, let's see how you'll see my attack, and it'll hit him, and he'll die. Okay, so it's the same here and there. Let me spawn more guys. So the idea is that I step on this tool, and it'll spawn more monsters. So they'll spawn a bunch, and they'll start chasing. And they'll chase him because he's closer. But they all die. There you go. I leveled up on this account, and you can see the health and everything here. It's facing the player. I'm level 1. I use mana, and it shows. Here it is. Move him over, and then let's check. So these guys will chase and attack me. Will actually deal damage, and then they'll see they pick the closest enemy. Okay, so that is pretty much it. I mean, it seems simple, but it's a network, right? I have my guy is the state authority on the game, and he's spawning the enemies, and you can see them both on the network and the client. I don't have footage. I will eventually do one where I record in the video, probably next week. I'll do a recording, and we'll dive deep into what's going on, so you could see it sync. But for now, this works. There's a lot of gotchas that happen with the setup, and I want to show you. So we are first going to dive into a high level overview of what's going on, and then we'll dive deep into each script so that you understand, and I'll try to be brief and to the point. If you have questions, if I missed something, please comment below. I'm willing to share whatever answers I have, or any questions you have, I'll answer them. Okay, so we have, let's say, 3 players, and we have the first player. In this case, the headset was the one spawning the AIs, and this AI represents the same AI here. It's just in what the other players see. So for the sake of clarity, the color determines who's in charge. And let's change this to Fireball to, let's say, let's pick player 2. So this is player 2 on the player side. So player 1 has state authority over its components. This is what the other players see. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to explain and show. We have player 3. When he comes in, he spawns his rig. Not the rig, but the visual representation, the VR rig, the VR Fusion rig. And so we have this where player 3, everything that's yellow, it's owned by player 3. So I mean, this is player 2. Player 2 owns this lane, you could say. So let me maybe add a frame. Like could say this way. This is all player 2. Okay, this is in that headset, and then you can say player 3 owns all these other ones. And so I'll do an overlay. Let's see if it let me. We'll do an overlay orange. So this is all player 2, okay? Player 3 owns its rig, player 1 owns its rig, and the AI is owned by player 1. I want to draw this because this is where it starts to get confusing. You have to understand what's going on. Okay, so the AI in here is not detecting anything here. There's no logic for the AI to know what these guys are doing. Okay, that's the first thing. The second part is that this guy has to move regardless. So this is what player 2 sees, right? That's the region. And he sees player 1, player 3. Okay, but because for the sake of what we're doing right now, the only person that needs to know each one of these objects and do the logic for the AI is player 1, because player 1's the one that spawned it, if that makes sense. So when this guy is going to say, okay, who's closer? Is player 3 closer? Is player 2 closer? Or who's my next target? And if it decides for some reason that player 2 is the closest target, right? Or player 3, doesn't matter. So let's say it picks number 2. It will go there, and this guy will move. And then we sync the animation, and this guy moves. Okay, so this guy, because it's blue, because it has state authority, it's spawned by player 1, he is the one doing the logic. Okay, if this was the server would do the logic, and then all players would just see the relay. Okay, and this is important because in order for the AI to detect the other players, player 2, player 3 have to have a sensor or an object that's being detected by the AI but that has to be spawned on everybody. So for example, when I spawn player 2, this player 2 that's on the client has to have a component or something that I can detect. And the same for this one. So all versions, just in case, because let's say this guy leaves. If this guy leaves, the AI will change state authority to this guy, right? And so now, and this guy left because player 1 left. Now this guy has to decide, okay, am I following player 3 or player 2, or am I wandering? And then I chase player 3, it will sync. So hopefully that makes sense. It's just that we have two variables, okay? We have the state authority where you're at and the client and how to carry that across. And because this is shared, again, this is not server authoritative, the way that I'm doing it is shared among them. So the state authority is what I need to check and you need to be aware of. Okay, who has state authority? Because oftentimes, a lot of the rookie mistake that happens with network logics is that we code things and say detect everything. And then you're like, why is it acting so weird? Or, for example, let's say this guy, we forgot to put a detection on these guys, on the client. Okay, so we don't understand that this is going on. And we say, well, I want this guy to chase player 2. But the computer, like in the code, it's not done that way, right? If you put the logic in here and it's not networked, then this guy is not going to detect. They don't see this. They see this, the computer sees this, and only attacks player 1. So oftentimes the logic, what you'll see happening is you'll create all this logic and you say, oh, why is this not working on the other player? Why is my AI or why is my thing only working for the host? This happens all the time. The reason is because you don't understand this logic. That's it. If you are able to grasp what's going on here, you'll be able to understand that problem. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to. It's so hard to explain. I'll show you in a second. So the main thing is the player. You have the player, like the local player, state authority, and then you have whatever the other people see. And the other computer and the other device doesn't see the same thing. And so you have to be aware of that and figure out how that's going to happen. The second thing is this AI, the logic, right? Only the person that has state authority will have the logic for doing all the pathfinding, the detection, and all that. We don't want that everywhere. Okay, so let me show you what that looks like in the game. Okay, because now you're like, okay, well, I don't understand still. So let's dive into the game. So we have let's go through the VR rig because you might know it, you might not. So we have this local rig. Okay, and this is the first problem we have to solve, the detection. Because if I put like an NPC, right? If you follow the tutorials before, we have the sensor task, and the task is looking for an NPC. If I say in here, oh, well, I'm going to add an NPC here. NPC, right? And then a collider or something, and the enemy AI will detect it. The problem with that is, again, this is local. This is not going to happen on the other players. Don't save. That's why we have this fusion rig. This is the network version that's on everybody. And this is hidden usually because we have all the logic on the local rig. So on the state authority, we hide this, but this is what spawns all the other stuff for everybody. And so as you can see in here, in head position, I have a health component and a box collider. This box collider is what the other enemies are detecting. And so this is how I fix that. I have a network solution for my player rig, and this health component is what the sensors are trying to detect. It's a health component. Can I damage this? And this health component has a damageable class. And this box collider is what's detecting. See, it's a damageable layer. And this is networked across. So this will work. It will create that for everybody, regardless. And so that way, everybody has the ability to detect me. Now it doesn't matter. We can use all the logics, regardless of who's doing the logic, because everyone has access to this. So let's say you wanted to do PvP. If I wanted to summon skeletons and attack the other player, well, I have this health component on the other player and the other NPCs. And so this logic, that detecting health components with iDamageable, is great because I can use it for everybody. All I have to do is change the team. See, so the players are in team 1, the enemies are in team 0. By default, everything's set to 0, and then I switch the players to 1. Now I can change the logic and say every enemy is at 0, or when I spawn a skeleton, it'll spawn in my team, whatever this team is. I can grab that component and make sure it's networked across all the others. So I can change where the team is based off. So instead of setting it in the editor, I could just do a getter or a setter and do it in the local rig and say, hey, tell my rigs that I'm team 3. And so everything I spawn will be team 3, and that will work. And so you can have different teams, you can have co-op, you can change a lot of stuff. So this is pretty cool because once you understand what's going on, you have control over how to manipulate that. Okay, so let's dive into the Axeman, because that's where the logic now that you know how the players are set up, we can say, okay, let's double check this, because that's the first thing I changed in here. I had to figure out this is not going to work like the single player version is going to work. Okay, because I wanted to have it for the enemy, it had to be networked, and so I have a health component. Could it be better? Definitely. This is just one working solution and it's not like the best. I already can tell you that. There's other ways to do it. What I'm trying to do is make sure that it gets the point across. Okay, this is what we need to do right now is make sure it works. Then later we can refactor. Right now, the main thing is trying to understand what's going on. Can we get these enemies to detect everybody? And you saw in the game that it could detect the other player, could detect me. They go to whoever they detect first, or the closest supposedly, or whoever's in their view. So they had an arch and whoever's within that view, and then the closest target between the two. And here you see that we changed, instead of doing NPC, because in here it had NPC, we have a health component. And there's still some logic that we have to change. So for example, this alive, we have to make sure that the object is spawned. So one thing that we have to do with these scans, this is specifically with the enemy, it's not a big deal, but then we also have an aim assist for the player that does something, it's the same, but for the player to help detect the enemies and shoot at the enemies. The main thing that we have to be aware of is that when the player despawns, it might not be null, but it also, the network variables might not work. Okay, and so it'll throw an error. And so that's something that we're gonna check in the next video. On Monday, a week from today, we're gonna do the attack and the damageable and stuff, and I'll polish that. Right now it's not ready, and in there we're gonna fix this logic. There's a check in here that we have to do that's not ready to do. Check if object is spawned, or so we have to make sure that this alive component is correct, okay, because that's something that we might run into with the network. But for now, this is working. That's just an edge case. Okay, so we have the detection. We changed everything to health component. The health component is a network behavior, has an iDamageable class, inherits from iDamageable. See, it's alive, Steam, health, mana. And then in here, see, we have all the network variables. And we have a setup state authority, setup client. That all happens when it spawns. So if you look at here, we have the base class, this enemy base class that has that health component. So this health component, and then it sets it up on spawn, sets up the state authority, and we also set up the client in here, NPC health setup. Okay, so these are all specifically because I needed the health, right? We needed an enemy level. Okay, so the enemy level is set at runtime because I'm going to spawn enemies level 1, level 2, level 3, level 20, whatever. And so this helps me scale the game with all these attributes. Okay, and max health and max mana, that's where we set it at. This is all set up here. And then on setup client, we just do the UI change. Okay, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing crazy complicated. This is just my way of adding the AI stuff to the game, right? But because I needed a health component that was derived by an enemy class, I needed to change the code a little bit. So we're detecting health components. If it has health, we can damage it, and we should be able to sense it or detect it, if that's what I mean, with a sensor or the aim assist. And so everything that can be shot or can be hit can also be detected. And so puzzles and things that can be hit, damaged, even pods, if I can break them, I can do that setup. The other thing, the main thing that we saw before is this AI network controller. In the previous Monday video, I believe, or the last videos in the series, you have in the comments this script that tells you exactly how to do everything. And I've updated some things. We have these NPC, can move, can attack, can damage. The main thing is can move. When it's updated, it'll move. It'll fix the updated method. In here, we also should set up in here if can move, because we don't want to animate the speed if it can't move. If it can't move, what we're going to do is return. We're not going to do that, and we're going to set the flow to 0 to make sure. So anytime it can't move, it'll just update the speed to 0 regardless. Okay, so this is just like a fail-safe because oftentimes maybe the speed will, even though we're here, right? Like, can we move? Has state authority? This should change it so that we are not updating the speed. But if for some reason something speed, we can go in here and say, hey, like we're not moving. So just set it to 0. And then later on, you might have other components that you might be walking or not. You can set it here. But for the most part, this will work here. If we just added the can move, the speed. The other thing the last thing I'm going to say about syncing, because this is the core, right? This is what drives everything. This is an AI network controller. The enemy base separates all the other logic because I want to have enemies that fly, enemies that do other things that don't need a rig or don't need animation. And so this separates that, okay? We have the health component that can be detected regardless of who you are. You're an enemy, you can be killed. That's all the enemy base. And here, this controller is connecting the animator with the other components, with the NPC. And so we have the position and the rotation. That's all we are worrying about. And then the animation controls, if we have different animations. Right now, we just have the speed at which we walk or run and whether you're attacking or not, okay? And so we have In here, the main thing is the buffers. The buffers is a huge hit because when you start making the game, you'll notice that there's jitters. And you start seeing that with the position. If you're in a flat surface, and you'll see that in a lot of videos, you have a nice nav mesh agent that with a nice nav mesh that's flat. But the problem is what happens when it's not flat? What happens if you want terrain or different things? As you saw, if you want to rewind back and look at the animation and see how it doesn't jitter, it used to jitter a lot. If you look at previous videos, you might see that. But you can notice the difference now. And the reason is because of this direction. So the first thing I do is say, hey, if it's less than this, then we don't bother. Like we don't want to do little numbers and because it'll give you that jitter. And the other in here, I noticed that if I up this a lot higher, because it still jitters, the Y rotation was not working as well. And so the Y rotation, I want it to be accurate because that's what's chasing the player. But the X and Z are the ones that I don't need as much. The main thing here is X and Z. We have a threshold, and this threshold is bigger, and that's what we use. Okay, the Y is not touched. You could also do an X threshold or a Z threshold to manipulate them separate if you want it. But this is just a nice thing to smooth things. This gives you control now. Now you have complete control on how to rotate things around at your own buffers. So you have your buffers. This could be a variable if you want. I just didn't bother because I didn't need it. Now you have complete control of that, and it'll fix the jitters. The last thing for like gotchas and tips is the animator. So let me show you in here. The animator, let me move myself in here. And here in the animator, you'll see that there's this call. For me, this is for me. In VR, at least it was happening in Fusion. I'm not sure if it's only Fusion, if it really pertains to network at all, or it's just a bug in Unity. But when I set the call, and what would happen is the moment I move away with the camera, it'll call just fine. But when I come back, it wouldn't return. It wouldn't call. So my tip is to remember to check this. If your animator is disappearing for some reason, this is the first culprit. The other way here is update when off screen. So if you see the bounds, let me show you the bounds. So see how the legs have bounds. So if you are not looking, if these are not within view, it will not update the bounds. This is for performance reasons. But if you're not seeing accurate representation, just make sure update off screen. This helps so that even if you're off screen, it'll animate. I had this problem also with VR, especially when you have like a rig for an arm and it's animating, right? Like a IK. And what would happen is the mesh would disappear. It would flicker at the wrong interval because in VR you have two eyes to camera, well, not to camera, but the vision is in display. And so this would not work correctly. And so what happened is I just had to say update off screen. So anytime you have animators, animations, rigs disappearing, check on when it's updating off screen. And in here with the animator, if it's always animating. Now this is not, it's a solution, it's not the solution. My thought is that these should still work regardless. It's just when it comes back. The off-screen one on the bones is kind of like a glitch in VR. It'll work fine in non-VR, so you can leave that off if it's not VR. But this one, it's just recent that I saw that, and I spent a lot of time trying to fix it, and it was a headache. Hopefully this will help you if you're having problems with that. The other thing that I noticed is that if your version is different than the version that you're shooting live, because I was making builds and testing, and if I tweak this and the other one doesn't match, for me, the animators were off sync. It would turn off everything. And so it wasn't working. So one thing to be aware of is this Fusion, for Fusion specifically, but everyone has rebuild prefab table. This rebuilds the table to make sure it's up to the latest. And then when you build, you make sure that those are in sync, because that often happens in network solutions is when you tweak things, but you don't make a build and then you connect to the same build, they're off, right? Because one has a different value than the other and it causes problems. So always make sure that if you change something that's networked, that you update the build. So that way when you're connecting, and the other thing is that you have a way to match the versions, because you don't want to upload a new version and then connect with a different one and be in the same server. Okay, so I removed my IDs from here, but if you go to tools, real-time settings, and here you can, and here's the settings, but in here I have how I change the version. So as long as I have a version here, I could say version 2, but I typically match it with the version build. That way they match with together. So version 101 will have 101 and 102 and so forth. So this makes sure that each version is connected. And then I know. So if I go back in my repository and I say I want to connect to this live version, I usually mark it that this is where that version comes from. That way they match again, because you don't want to have a synced version match with the different values, because it'll create problems with what spawns and So the way you know this is happening is usually if things are turned off, or when you spawn things, it spawns something else. So for example, you're like trying to spawn a crate and it spawns an enemy, and you're like, what the heck is going on? Why is that? Or for example, you put in a glove, but that glove is not what you think. It's like a head cosmetic. Is because there's a desync of network variables and you're connecting to the wrong version. And so you want to make sure that they line up. And so especially when there's a live version up, there's other players, they have whatever's on their device. And if you're coming in as a developer and changing things on your end and connecting to the same the version, you're going to affect their experience. So you got to be careful with that. So those are the tip. If you have any questions, let me know. Did I miss something? Did you want it to look something more specific? The main thing was the health component. Again, as a tip, it takes a lot of debugging. Even when you get everything right and you copy paste all the code, there's a component of you checking layers, making sure things are happening, that everything has what it needs to. And no matter what, even if you copy paste the code from anyone, you just have to do the work. There's no skipping, especially in multiplayer. And that's why multiplayer games are hard, is because they take debugging to a whole new level, and it's frustrating. It's annoying, but the more you do it, the better you get at it, and you just got to get through it. Hopefully this save you time. I know it's a lifesaver for me because I did a lot of work trying to figure out what was wrong with certain things, and I'll definitely keep a pin on this video for me for the future in case I forget. We'll see you on Thursday when we start looking into the damageables in single player and then going into multiplayer for next Monday. See ya.